And then once that's started, we can get going, because the good and the faithful who watch on YouTube as it's streamed live. There we go. And I'll just mute it as well. Okay. Welcome everybody to another Welcome everybody to another Kaizen Central. Delighted to see people joining us today. I anticipate we'll have more people coming in as the evening wears on. Indeed, they're coming in as we speak. I'd just like to report, I've had a couple or three conversations this week, which have been, under the circumstances and in the context of where we are, quite remarkably encouraging. I mean, literally half an hour ago, I was actually talking to Brian Holliday, who's the CEO of Siemens Digital Industries. And I've never heard a man so excited, first of all, by a fantastic event he did with a car company this week with his apprentices. In fact, he's just coming back from it. And he was absolutely pumped about the quality of the apprentices. They were actually shaming the elder engineers because they were coming up with ideas that the older engineers actually hadn't thought about, which was just brilliant. So he's very pumped about that, but more about actually the fact that he felt that the sector, apart from some very, very obvious elements, I mean, I'm thinking, of course, aerospace, and there are others, and anybody associated, is actually in pretty good shape. People are as busy, he said, as ever before. And even though we face the prospect of what's happening up north with the lockdowns, local lockdowns, fearing that it may be another national lockdown, I just wonder what people's moods are about the resilience. I'd like to say hello to Lee. I don't know, Lee, whether you're on another telephone call, because I know you had a call a second ago, but it's great to see you. I'm just wondering what, what's your sense? Are you feeling that that life is busy and that you know, that things are okay, or have you been affected? What's your mindset at the moment?
If you want an open and honest opinion, I'm an forever eternal optimist. And yes, COVID has affected us dramatically. We lost 2 customers virtually overnight within a month, and we had long-term agreements pulled from under us. That affected us amazingly, because as a result of that particular customer, we went out and invested £800,000 on another CNC mill turn machine. And then we've lost the capacity for both of them then straight away. So having said that, it is not doom and gloom. There are other areas, and we've got some very good projects on the go. And should they start, pardon the pun, taking off, then for the whole industry, it's going to be very exciting. It's all around urban air mobility. Look at different markets other than aerospace, or UAVs is very strong. Space is very strong. R&D side, rapid prototyping. What British manufacturing and UK manufacturing is really good at is innovative, superb, precise, complex, precision pieces of art that are capable of moving our great nation forward in leaps and bounds. I'm really positive, really positive. And to give you an idea, I need 2 more 5-axis millers. I want another turner. I'm looking for another apprentice. So even though we made some redundancies due to a restructuring, we're still in the process of potentially further recruitment at this as we speak.
Well,
we want to be in a position to move forward. This is going to get better. People are going to go back on holiday. It's not all bloody doom and gloom out there. Life is going to go on. People want to buy cars, whether it's electric, whether it's high performance, whether it's motorcycles, whether it's electric scooters. whatever it might be. There's markets out there. You just need to think outside the box and go and find them.
Well, that sounds absolutely fantastically, and I'm sorry that you've had some obvious road bumps, but it's actually what I was talking about with Brian. What we were both reflecting was that actually manufacturing, whether it gets the recognition or not, stands the great opportunity to be the engine that drags the economy out of the inevitable hit it's taking. And of course, the leisure and retail industries are taking a much greater hit than manufacturing is. And I'm wondering what anybody else thinks about that. I mean, obviously, it is a phenomenon in the sector that optimism and I suppose you can't be a pessimist in this game because there are too many knocks and you'd always look backwards. You've just got to overcome them and move on. It's great to hear you speak like that, Lee. But anybody else got any thoughts about about resilience? Angelo, I think the resilience of the sector is fantastic, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on our capacity to help the economy get out of jail.
I've actually had quite a few conversations in the last couple of weeks with different manufacturers, and all of those conversations have been really positive. And in fact, one manufacturer told me they are doing better now than they were pre-lockdown. So I say I've not heard any negative news coming out of manufacturing. I think it's all very, very positive, and it's great.
I mean, it is quite remarkable that we had this positivity, because we also know that not just COVID, we got Brexit around the corner, and nobody quite knows what's going to happen with that. Again, I have a feeling that the sector has that capacity to barrel through this, take the knocks and come out the other side. But the knocks could be quite damaging to some people, particularly if they're in very close to logistics and all of that. Who else has got some thoughts on this? Stephen, welcome. I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. I know you've been incredibly busy, and you talk to a lot of manufacturers. What's the mood you're detecting out there? Mute, sir, mute. Sorry, I do it all the time.
Just to echo the point about resilience, that's what I'm seeing with the companies I'm working with. I mean, some of them have had really, really tough times, but the fact they're still surviving and they're now talking about recovery, I think speaks volumes for the industry as a whole.
Ram, I know that you're an eternal optimist, but you're also finding a lot of good stuff going on where you are.
Absolutely. Again, the way I'm looking at it, yes, we've had a bit of a bad run with the hatches.
Sorry, Ram. Sorry, Ram. I'm going to have to. Can you just sort out your microphone? You're coming across quite distorted. Sorry, Sean.
Am I better now?
You certainly are. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hand covering the mic. So yeah. So yes, we've been through a rough patch. I mean, it's again the point. The key thing to remember is we're not alone in this. It's basically wiped the entire world with this pandemic, so we're not the only ones suffering. So again, the resilience has been a British spirit, put your heads down, get on with it, get it done. I think that has been the biggest strength we've had as the industry, as the country as well, wherein, yes, we are going through a bit of a storm of whatever it is, but, we've battered it. We're now basically focusing on surviving and recovering and prosperity. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, like you said, and I can only see a lot of hope for the sector.
You're going to be talking next week, Ram, at a conference in Manchester, virtual, I assume, on digital manufacturing through the Indus Entrepreneurs Network. Just give us a flavour of what the Indus Entrepreneurs Network is, because it certainly was new to me, and I suspect it'll be new to others. And I think that many of us will find it quite interesting to have a look at what they do, and maybe engage in some of their obviously very good events.
Yeah, so the Indus Entrepreneurs, or in short, as we call it, TIE, is a global entrepreneurship organization that was founded in Silicon Valley in 1992. Now it has got a number of chapters worldwide, including America, Europe. They've got 2 chapters in the UK, Thai North and Thai London. In mainland Europe, in Germany, they have a chapter. We have chapters in the Middle East, India, Africa, and even in Australia and New Zealand. And Thai is based on, is a collective of global entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, advisors, mentors, and investors who've come together on 5 principles, which is investment, incubation, mentoring, education, and networking. And when you become a member of one chapter, you automatically become a member of all chapters of Thai globally. Therefore, you automatically have a reach of tons and tons of thousands of people all over the world who are all members. You can mentor them, you get a mentor, and it's amazing. And I've been with them for 2 years now. So the event we're doing on Monday is focused on intelligent manufacturing, where we're trying to demystify digital and telling people why they need to do digital as opposed to why people think they want to do digital, if that makes sense.
Well, that does sound great. Alex just asked if you could possibly pop the link to Thai into the chat box, Ram. That would be fantastic. I just think that. Sorry, doing that. Fantastic.
I'm doing it now. Yeah.
Julian, good evening. Good evening to you. And a global network of like this sounds quite exciting to somebody like you who enjoys looking at new companies and all of that.
Yeah. No, it's very good. I'm actually one of the fantastic advantages of this lockdown period is I don't know whether it's the the dividend you get from not traveling, but I've had a lot more time to look at these groups internationally. And the one I've been concentrating on, well, not the one, but the whole area, is social responsibility, impact funds. We were talking last week or the week before about sources of capital and the degree to which it was freely available, equity investment rather than asset-backed lending from banks. And my simplistic observation is that all these worlds are colliding. That you think you're in one sector, in this group in manufacturing, and you're very close to projects which are going to have a social impact, and it's pretty obvious where the interfaces may be. Whether it's processes for cleaning water, or or ocean waste, or plastic regeneration. And I'm lifting the lid on an incredible number of venture capital companies and funds raising capital expressly to support those social initiatives. It's amazing.
It is actually, and what's interesting to me, I was having a conversation many weeks ago now, and some of you may remember his name's Martin Chilcott from Manufacture 2030, who promotes sustainable manufacturing. And he was saying that some of the very, very, very largest funds, such as BlackRock, which have got trillions under investment in large manufacturing companies, are actually mandating sustainability, carbon net zero process, and where possible product on the people they invest in, and that's heading all the way down the supply chain. So I absolutely echo what Julian's saying, that this is all beginning to collide.
The report I was listening to, or the event I was listening to this afternoon, sort of was mapping the path from corporate social responsibility, which was basically sort of putting a logo on something, or maybe a small monetary contribution, to very substantially creating accelerators or entrepreneurial divisions of companies expressly with a view to developing social responsibility aspects. So
did they explain
where that's going?
Did they explain whether this was, if you like, a change from, the Milton Friedman philosophy, which he expressed in the 70s, but then took a grip in the 80s, 90s, noughties, which was all about shareholders having preeminence over any other stakeholders, such as community, workforce, environment, and so on. do you think that it is actually a shift away from that now, and that this is genuine social responsibility, other than just because there's cash in it?
Yes, because I think the presumptive thing before was that social enterprises were by definition unprofitable. And the idea that a socially or environmentally impact initiative that existing companies can take, there are funds and institutions and accelerators and support networks that we've just been hearing about, that close that gap and say absolutely not. That environmental business or a division or an operational aspect of a socially responsible and impactful company can be as profitable as anything else. I think that's the thing that's changed. So now everybody's waking up to the fact that they can do good and make money, to put it crudely.
Yeah. But to be quite honest, Julian, there's nothing particularly new there to me, because it's nothing. I mean, I've worked for companies like if you provide to the French railways, you had to demonstrate your ESG credentials. And the way you did it for the French railways, there was a tool called EcoVadis, and you have to demonstrate that you're a socially responsible company. You have to put things in like the trade unions you recognise, minutes of meetings with unions, and if you have to make hard decisions and lay people off, you have to describe the process and demonstrate it. So as well, I'm a bit so about some of the companies that are coming out as ESG, because I believe that some of them are big oil companies even, and the reasons I can't remember exactly the reasons they're noted as ESG, but I think maybe it's because they have some sort of long-term plan to get away to be an energy organization as opposed to being an oil organization. So they're looking at wind and wave and stuff. But I think there are plenty of models of incredibly profitable ESG companies. Yeah. And also, if you look at ESG countries, Switzerland is an incredibly strict country. Socially more than government. I always thought there was a minimum wage in Switzerland when I lived there, but apparently there isn't a minimum. There is in Geneva now, I think, but there wasn't a legal minimum wage. But if you stack the shelves in the Tesco's or whatever, you were still getting paid £10 an hour. It looked like it. So there are examples of companies and there are examples of countries that really are very, very strongly ESG. And I think personally, I think the crude profit, like we're going to do nothing but make a profit and screw everybody else for the shareholders. I think that those are the anomalous organizations.
Well, who'd like to chime in on that? Simon in the United States, where of course Mr. Milton Friedman and the Chicago School came from. I mean, is that attitude still strong over there?
I think it as with most things over here, particularly at the moment, particularly this week, it depends who you talk to. Well, the thing that I find quite fascinating, from trying to put the politics aside, but you can't. On the left, in the Democratic Party, the candidate, Vice President Biden, has come under pressure from the left for rejecting what was called the Green New Deal, right, which was a very substantial range of initiatives that the left wanted to have as policy. And his view was different. His view was, let's not take a big step. In fact, let's not take 4 big steps. Let's take one reasonably small step, but actually relate the things together and have a package of policies that integrate the needs of organized labor, the needs of the infrastructure of the country, the needs of the green side, if you will, and put all these things together in a way that makes sense. So let's look at what would be necessary to build what the US actually needs, which is a completely new electrical grid. Needs a completely new grid. It's not complicated. It's just big. And it would be much, much better, in their view, if as a result of needing to build a new grid, we actually integrate into that a process by which we are generating the majority of our electricity through sustainable or renewable, or whichever adjective we use, means. Which and let's not try and choose one particular technology. Let's apply multiple technologies, because what works really, really well in the American Northwest, i.e. wind and wave, doesn't work particularly well in Nevada, because they don't have very much wind and they've got no water, but they've got a hell of a lot of sun. So, well, let's make Nevada a solar state. Yeah, and you can see the point. And one of his arguments, which only came out in a little interview the other day and didn't get much reporting, he said, well, can you imagine what would happen to US industry and manufacturing if our electricity was costing us 1/10 of what it's costing us today? And the interviewer, of course, not being at all savvy with anything that the industry does, was basically saying, well, you know, well, surely they don't use much electricity, you know. But you know, the point is well made. I mean, his argument is you can actually bring all of these things together in a way that works in a capitalist democratic society. So we're not doing, he's not proposing what the Chinese have done. And that's to say, right, okay, everybody change, we're doing this, boom, you know, off you go. Because you can't do that in the US. But what you can do is you can put in place policies that make it possible to make these things happen, to encourage companies to do the things that some of the companies, as Steve and Julian were talking about, there are some companies that are already there, but there's an awful lot of companies that aren't. And Biden's idea, quite simply, is, well, let's encourage them. Let's do the usual thing. Let's make it more profitable for them to do it this way than that way. And let's make this way the way that's more sustainable. So yes, it is happening. But it's a very different structure, particularly this week.
Yeah, this week. Good luck with that. Stephen Barr. You're on mute again, oh boy. No, you actually, you weren't on mute, but we couldn't hear you. I'm not certain what's going on.
No,
Houston, we have a problem. Yeah. Okay. Who else has got some thoughts on this about? I know these are very macro issues. They will affect us all. I have a feeling that somewhere in the stumble-bum operations of the British government, I'm getting a sense that they are also seeing with some encouragement, certainly for hydrogen and other green energies. But has anybody else got any thoughts? I mean, Lee, what's your view on this about aiming for process net zero or anything like that? Is that part of your program in the near, middle, and long future?
Well, presently, we do have some customers that ask us to maintain ISO 14001, which is the environmental standard to provide minimum impact and try and produce as much waste as possible. It is for a small SME such as ours, it was a costly exercise, and however, it's now become part of the culture, and we adhere to it implicitly as part of our day-to-day processes. So our customer has now agreed that we no longer need to be accredited, because our culture has changed to the extent that it becomes a natural part of day-to-day process to be as environmentally friendly as possible. So all the guys have got their own cups rather than the plastic disposable ones out of the drinking machines. Silly small things like this, reusable component boxes with foam and specific bespoke inserts, as opposed to bubble wrap and cardboard and plastic tape. And then we introduced a Kanban system. It was quite a big investment, but it cost best part of nearly £40,000 to invest in enough packaging material, but the payback was as little as 18 months. What we were spending on cardboard boxes, tape, And more importantly, we realised it was the footprint and the storage areas that we were having to stock so much cardboard and bubble wrap and tape. So we agreed with the customer. We had like a Kanban situation where a third of the product was with the customer, a third was in production, and a third was in inspection stroke goods out. So we had a continuous cycle of recycling and reusing packaging. But as far as the long term goes, my MD has a young daughter and a family that are very environmentally conscious. So there are and is talks of becoming solar. Net zero is too much, I think, for us to expect as a small SME with the amount of investment that would be required. However, we are making small and gradual steps to achieve that. So
Yeah.
it is on the back. It's definitely aware there. Now I've been in manufacturing since a 14-year-old boy on a Saturday morning, sweeping up and making the tea, and used to tip the dirty coolant down the drain. So it's the environment has changed for the better, in my opinion. As a guy that likes nature and goes fishing, but don't get me wrong, I've seen changes. The DAFs come out in January instead of picking them in March for Mother's Day. So the seasons are changing, and there is a global impact, and I think that's recognised. And it's up to people of my generation to try and get on board and become under pressure from my daughter that's just leaving. Well, there you go, sweetheart. To make sure that we sustain it for my grandchildren and my grandchildren's grandchildren. So, and getting back to manufacturing, we are now becoming more and more Industry 4.0, which is the connectivity of all things. We're trying to be more efficient in the running, so we've got automatic power off on our machines when you come to the end of a manufacturing cycle, whether that's after go home at 5 o'clock, leave the machine running for 5 hours unattended due to automation and robotics. And then when the job's finished, everything powers off. So there are small incremental steps that everybody can make. And those small changes will magnify and end up becoming a large change. And I wrote a piece about change not so long about, and I think globally, we are going to have massive change. As the great Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep bloody going. We will get out of this. It will get better. But I think the days of a £1.99 t-shirt and £5 shoes are gone. We need to be more sustainable. We're too much of a throwaway society. I think quality is going to become more prevalent in society in all aspects of products, whether that's Starbucks, Costa, they're all, they've all got their free cups that trying to minimize waste because their cardboard cups aren't recyclable because they're plastic lined. Everybody is starting to come on board, and all these things need to be manufactured. So the way of thinking and the way of manufacturing products to become sustainable is happening. And culturally, we need to accept it and embrace it. And that way we can move forward and become profitable. So we've stopped looking at aerospace components. And I think the aerospace primes are going to be sorry for their knee-jerk reaction for laying off so many skilled individuals, because SMEs such as ourselves and even larger organizations have already started to diversify into other markets. And I think they're going to find that the payment terms are more agreeable, it's more profitable, they're easier to deal with, they're less demanding, and business is easier. So I think they will struggle to rebuild and re-ramp up their supply chain. Don't get me wrong, if Airbus knocks on my door and says, Lee, can you make 1,000 of these widgets? I'll have a look at it, but I'm not going to kowtow to their terms just because they're Mr. Airbus.
Well, it's the great fear I had, and I'm not alone, I'm shared by millions, I'm sure, that as you said, somewhat knee-jerk reaction sometimes to lay off a lot of people, and even worse, if small companies go down, which have got specific skills, it's going to take a long time to get them back, if ever. John Hardwick, welcome. Lovely to see you. What are your thoughts? You work with a lot of SMEs. I'm sorry, is it the Manufacturers Alliance at Cranfield?
So I lecture at Lancaster University on change management. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, but I also am a member of a group called Manufacturers Alliance, which is a networking group for SMEs in the northwest. So yeah, a couple of trends that I'm seeing with our SMEs. One is, and thinking about my roots really into Lean Six Sigma productivity, etc. I'm seeing that this short, sharp shock of COVID is, I was discussing this with my son actually recently, who's a consultant. We're wondering whether we're actually going to see an uptick in productivity in the second half of this year and the first half of next year, because we're seeing a trend for the manufacturers identifying those truly value-added activities and the people that do those, and the less value-added activities, and they're seeing that they can do without those while they're trying to control their costs. So actually they may come back stronger after that. But one of the questions I thought might be interesting to ask the group is actually about what do they see as the impacts of working from home that have happened over the last 9 months? Because there's a natural progression from working from home to working anywhere. And actually that means that a lot of these administrative activities that are being done from home could actually be done from anywhere in the world. So do you think that we're going to see more offshoring of some of the transactional stuff because they're realizing they don't have to have a UK employee to do the work, and there are lower cost economies out there that could do the work? I'm not advocating for it. I'm more worried that it's actually something that people may jump to.
Yeah, Rowan, good evening to you. What are your thoughts?
Hi. Yeah, I can't go into too much detail, John, but I was informed last week that my job was moving to Poland. So right. Yes, is my simple answer to that. But yeah, I mean, that's just my point of view, right? It might be
yeah, it's an N of one, but it could be indicative. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the specific reason for my redundancy was movement to lower cost regions.
Yeah.
What is your role, Rowan? What is your job role? What do you do, and who do you work for? Forgive me, I don't know you.
No, that's absolutely fine. So I currently am the global manufacturing marketing lead at Hitachi, more specifically Hitachi Vantara, which is their IT services side. So yeah, so that was the role that I was doing. But obviously, like you said, John, it's an administrative role in the sense that it is marketing. But I think regardless of what sector you're in, whether it's manufacturing directly or in my case, supporting manufacturers, that I think that will be the case nonetheless.
Yeah,
I mean, I think on the plus side, there's pressures for onshoring as well, you know, with Brexit and with COVID, and looking at the resilience of networks and some of the challenges of Brexit. I can see that, and I'm already seeing this with some of our manufacturers. They are forming more local collaborations. They're looking to source more locally, and they're looking to simplify their supply chains, and some are even looking to, you know, go a bit more vertical in their own structures to bring some stuff in-house that was outside, just from a resilience point of view and wanting a resilient supply chain. So I think there's quite a few pressures in that direction as well.
Mike Morris, you work with a lot of SMEs. What are you hearing and seeing?
Yeah, I was just remarking to myself there on a conversation I picked up where the massive saving in travel. We go to a meeting, you've got to take a half day at least, and it could be more. It could be an overnight stay. So therefore, you'll put it off for another week, another 2 or 3 weeks. In the end, maybe it won't happen. Whereas now, You can get multiple meetings in one day on an international basis. So the leverage of time is just huge if we can get the hang of doing it. And the alliances that can be created in this way, again, are almost limited only by imagination. We got to get into that style of thinking. So it's not working from home, it's remote working, it's wherever you are, it really is. And or working from one place and having multiple meetings and saving massively on not only on the time taken for travel, the delays that come about because I can't go yet. I've got to wait till next month, blah, blah.
I completely agree with you, Michael, 100%. I'm involved in precision engineering, time served, come off of the shop floor, sold cutting tools, and then capital equipment, CNC machine tools. And I have had the pleasure of going into fantastic places all over our glorious countries, from 10-foot diameter valves up in Aberdeen to marital aids to footwear to signing the Official Secrets Act for the MOD. We can make absolutely bloody everything. But the vast majority of my time as a sales guy that was on the road was out of a 10-12 hour day, spending 80% of that in the car. Now, and driving 50,000 miles a year. Now, what I found with COVID is I've been much more effective at the preliminary meetings where you establish your customers' requirements and to establish if you can offer a solution. So the messy bit at the beginning of the process can be resolved very, very quickly. And with the aid of technology now, you can quite easily build up a personal rapport with your client, your customer, whoever it might be. And it saves those initial periods of time to go and have a look at a problem. Well, I'm not 100% sure. Let me go away again and find out. And if I can do this, that, and the other, and then making another appointment 1, 2 weeks, a month later, then more question. It can piff, puff, puff. It can be done relatively quickly. And we strongly believe that this is going to be the way forward. Companies are going to save a fortune on fleet vehicles. They're going to save a fortune on overnight hotel stays. They're also, and I'm afraid there will be more redundancies, but especially from larger organizations with middle management, where because of COVID, they've realized that Bill, Bert, and Fred have done a fantastic job at home, and they don't need Jane, Richard, and Mark anymore to manage them, because they're doing it perfectly well by themselves. So they only need one manager between them to do certain things. So, and then there's the other aspects of rent, electricity, gas, running the factories, offices. So I think there will be a lot more remote working. And I think that a lot of business owners have been pleasantly surprised at how much they can trust their employees.
Yeah.
They've also found out which ones they can't trust during this period of time. So change is going to happen. And I think it was Jimmy Carter that said that we must embrace change, but still hold on to our basic principles. So keep your culture, your integrity, but we're going to have to accept this way of change, and it is changed. It's changed already. We're here. We're doing it now. I've never met you guys before. I've never met.
Sorry, Lee. I was going to say, thinking about these forces, what I can actually see is that knowledge work, as you've been describing, where it's conversational. There's no physical movement of materials. It's the knowledge and information that's moving. That is going to become far more scattered, but then the other pressures on reducing the carbon footprint of our activities, I think that's going to drive the actual manufacturing operations together and to shorten the supply chains for the physical assets. So that's an interesting tearing apart of the current business model. If you think if knowledge work is going to be scattered, but actually there's lots of drivers of moving the actual physical manufacturing processes together. That's really going to be quite a big change.
Can I bring Alec Anderson? Can I bring
the change? I could, if I was tech savvy enough and had the software, I could pick up my phone now. I could dial into the machine in Bridgewater, and I could press a few buttons on my phone, and providing that the pallets were loaded with material, I could start the machine. So the technology has jumped so amazingly far in terms of manufacturing. It is incredible, and we're getting into additive manufacturing now rather than subtractive, which means we need less materials. However, the power going on, it's robbing Peter to pay Paul at the moment. The argument over diesel over electric, if you're a sales guy doing 30,000 miles plus, you need to do a lot of miles to get your payback from a carbon footprint point of view.
Can I bring in Alec Anderson? I'd like to bring in Alec. Alec, you work across the world, so we've been hearing about how the sort of breakdown of traditional structures in our working environment. But have you noticed any change in the way you do your business, given, as I say, that you do work across the globe?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've worked at home. I've worked from home in the UK for 30 years. The only difference now is I have to go for a walk every day, which I never used to have to do. Right. But we had, so we work with China, we work with India. I had an office in China, I had a UK phone there. I listened to Radio 2 while I was working. The only thing was breakfast show was in the evening. So I think the connectivity is interesting, but I don't think working from home is a panacea for all ills. It's very isolating. Not everybody can do it. And I think right now we're in extreme, COVID in this 6 months, it's a novelty, very extreme situation. And I think when it settles down that I think we'll work with a hybrid sort of thing where we work more days from home, but we will still have some sort of interaction. You're not going to be working from home every day of the year forever. That's probably the way to work.
This is where the remote is not just working from home, but there can be local groups of unrelated people working in co-working space. So they get a sense of community, but they're not necessarily at home with a dog barking and, whatever.
My most of us working remotely, I think. Because every year
might end up being a sort of collective meeting space for local groups, and maybe on a monthly or bi-monthly basis having if you're a national company, get everybody getting together. But I do think we will not be all working in isolation forever.
Yeah, right. The market is moving towards developing those spaces already. There were providers who are looking at not somewhere you could travel locally, but to get out of the house, but you could get a hot desk. And now people are seeing, I think, that kind of we can all meet at the XYZ Center the third Thursday of every month, or 2 days every week, or whatever. Ram, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about the work from anywhere thing, and I think Mike might be aware of this as well, Mike Morris. Usually during the December Christmas time, I'm off to India to meet my parents. And when we were doing the big projects for the European Space Agency, I was working from there, from Bangalore in India. Projects got delivered on time, clients didn't have a problem, the team didn't have a problem. So we've always done this work from wherever you want to work, and we measure performance by the throughput, by what gets delivered, rather than measuring it in terms of timesheets and clocking in and clocking out and all that. So yeah, if anybody wants any more evidence that working from remote places works, I'm right here. I'll vouch for it.
Sarah, and then Simon. Sarah, hi, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yes, it's interesting actually, all this conversation. I've come from a background working in the corporate market. So I worked for BT for about 16 years, and BT was quite a pioneer with flexible working back in the 80s when it had a huge property portfolio in London that was costing an arm a leg. And that was the real driver for working sort of flexibly. So I sort of went back to BT after having my younger daughter who's now coming up to 22. So I've been working remotely for that number of years, and was actually interviewed by a Japanese film crew who came to my house and followed me across London for 2 days, sort of understanding the whole remote working, because at the time, it was something a real new concept. But it's interesting dealing with SME manufacturers. We certainly had challenges when we talked about doing demonstrations of our software online, and it was all very, very novel. Obviously now we're doing all of our work remotely, and I found that those same manufacturing companies that were obviously very nervous about that technology have got used to it and working. But I pick up on the point about working remotely, and particularly from home, isn't for everybody, and there is that need to have constant contact. And I think as a manager of sales teams in the past, I was always conscious about regularly checking in with the guys, not so much in terms of making sure that they were delivering the work, but just checking on their mental welfare, that they weren't feeling isolated. So I think that's really important.
Thanks, Sarah. Simon.
Right.
I was just going to say a couple of quick points. One, the projects that I'm currently working on that represent all of our business at the moment, I haven't had a single in-person meeting. Now, one of the companies that I'm working with, the guy I'm working with is someone I've known for 30 years, but I hadn't seen him in person since 2012. So that's that one. The other small point, if this is something that's happening in the US, the significant increase in the property market in houses above a certain value, with people earning above a certain salary, looking to increase the size of their property so that they can now have multiple offices as separate working spaces, because they are husband and wife, usually a couple, who are both working for organizations that have made a long-term commitment to working remotely, and the companies have already said they're going to be scrapping their offices and moving some of that money into supporting people who want to set up separate offices at home, hence increase in market size. Now, on that point, the whole taxation, the tax base, is going to change dramatically as a result of this.
Bet your boots.
Huge. I mean, I think I mentioned a few weeks ago the idea that we need to tax robots, because we were previously getting income tax from the income that people were getting. We don't tax robots. It's going to be a similar thing. A friend of mine's in the commercial real estate business. Well, he is at the moment in the commercial real estate business. He is in the process of getting out of the commercial real estate business because, and another friend of mine has just retired from a big property developer, builder basically, and he said he couldn't have left at a better time, because there are projects in downtown DC that are being converted from office to accommodation, because the commercial property market has already basically died.
Julian.
Just an operational thing. I mean, we are in transition, and we don't know what the working environment is going to be like. And what Alex said is obviously true, that things are not going to go back to normal. But one of the jobs as a non-exec I've had to do recently on one of the boards I'm on is deal with a flexible working request. And I think we're going to get a lot of those. We have a chief technical officer for that company that's working from home, and he wanted to go from, he already works from home 1 day a week. He wanted to go to 5 days a week permanently. Obviously that's what he's doing at the moment, but he put through a HR formal request to do 5 days at home. And the chief executive and I were really struggling with it, because we thought, we just don't know where the middle ground is going to be, because some of the things that are relevant for working together, and I know there's Monday.com and there's all sorts of project management software that's come to the fore to deal with the fact that people are not in the same room, but there's still an aspect of innovation that comes through the synergy of people working together. There's training, there's mentoring, and there's a whole series of stuff that may go totally online, but we are in transition. So I'm just sort of flagging up that, that a lot of employees are taking the initiative now to say, let's let's grab this opportunity and cement our working at home situation while they can. So you're all leaders of your companies, and I guess you are, like I am, having to deal with, do you accede to that now, or do you just say, look, sorry, let's just let it settle down and try and work out a pattern using best practice from talking to other companies, because it's quite a difficult thing to crack on your own. And if I could just say really quickly, just going back to the subject, my brother-in-law manufactures food products for Marks and Spencer's 100% out of Vietnam. And I often have conversations with him, environmental things. How can you justify that? Obviously, he justifies it primarily on the salary costs, salary differential to doing it in the UK. But the biggest thing is transportation. And the cost of a container, if some of you are doing this and you can correct the number, then do. The cost of a container that ships unbelievable thousands of units of food products from Vietnam to London is £400. And when you attribute fully a refrigerated container, and when you attribute the marginal cost, the transportational cost to the end consumer product, it's nothing. Like the famous, quarter of a penny on the price of a Coca-Cola can as the marketing cost. And so I think the idea of bringing stuff, somebody said very sensibly, we don't want to have supply chains breaking down. So onboarding manufacturing domestically takes better control over those situations. But I'm just pointing out there's some really big issues that are not going to be solved environmentally, because it's just ridiculously cheap to move products around the world.
That's amazing. Ben, sorry, good evening to you.
Hi.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I think just a couple of things come up for me. I think the first is, I very much agree with Mike's point that now I think we're going to see a lot of savings from people not traveling around the country, both environmentally and cost-wise. But I think the smartest businesses will come up with a hybrid approach, because if someone said to me, I want to be 5 days out of the office, I'd be like, no way. 3, 2, maybe. But at the end of the day, we are social people. And if you've got a knotty issue to solve, Zoom is so good, but it's not the same as sitting around a table with a piece of paper, trying to understand and try to come up with creative solutions. So it's the same with sales meetings. First sales meeting is great online. Second one, but when you want to secure the deal and look someone in the face, you got to be face to face with them to connect with them. So I think the smartest businesses are going to find the in-between solution, which gets the savings, gets the environmental benefits, but doesn't forget that we are social creatures and we want to talk to people.
Well, what I find fascinating about what you just said, Ben, is that what we're doing right here and right now is an absolute consequence of lockdown. It would not have happened. I can guarantee it wouldn't have happened. We'd have been trying to do something a lot more complicated. And so, yes, I personally can celebrate what we're doing here and now. And this is something new that's been able to develop. But as you rightly say, it shouldn't be allowed to push to one side all those things that matter. As somebody once said in one of our conversations, I can't remember who, we are tribal animals. We need contact, some more than others, but that spark that you get from actually being in the same room with somebody is quite amazing. The innovative spark, and you may not get it over an online at all. So that is something that we're going to have to live with. Mark Weymouth, have you any thoughts on this? You work remotely, I know, and have done for a while. What are your thoughts? Oh, I think he's gone silent. He's gone for a drink. Anybody else got any thoughts around? Let's just push the last 5 minutes back to resilience. I just want any other thoughts on that, because that's really where we started. This was about our ability. Rowan, good evening again.
Hi, yes. So I actually wrote some notes, and it was the first notes that I wrote on what Lee was saying. So I picked up, Lee, that you were saying that you're starting to look at other sectors rather than aerospace necessarily. And I think, are we talking about resilience, or are we talking about the agility that our manufacturers have in the UK, right? To be able to switch, so small and medium-sized manufacturers being able to switch from producing products for aerospace all of a sudden to producing similar but not the same parts for other sectors. So I think, does it come down to agility? And the other point that I wrote down on what Lee said was agility in the fact that the machines can change what they're doing, but also the agility of the senior leadership of these companies to be able to change their segmentation, targeting, positioning, operations, and marketing to support that change in sector. So it's not just a case of changing what you produce, but changing how you market what you produce. So, retraining your salespeople on how to sell into new sectors and everything else that goes alongside it, and new marketing materials, etc.
Yeah, I think that agility is an excellent word. I would argue that being agile is actually part of being resilient, because it means that you don't shatter when sudden shock change comes along. You bend, you change. Horrible word, pivot. I think it's all part and parcel of the same thing. Anybody else got any thoughts on the resilience that we all hope is going to see us through this? John?
Just to build on your point, really, Nick, which is, it's always been good practice in any business to have diversity, isn't it? Diversity of customers. You don't want to have too much of your work tied up with one customer, but I think it's a reminder about sectors as well. Some sectors are roaring ahead in this COVID situation, but if you're doing anything to do with the hospitality, or one of the guys in our group does audio equipment for rock concerts and external events. I mean, his work is completely in pieces. So diversity across sectors, not just across customers, I guess, is part of the resilient equation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a vital thought. Ram?
Just one point there. I think there is the other confusion about confusing resilience with stubbornness, because resilience is about doing whatever it takes to survive and trying different things out, but stubbornness is going at the same thing the same way and expecting change to happen. And that's something I've noticed. A lot of people confuse resilience and stubbornness, and that's why a lot of things don't happen. Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's the old thing, isn't it? Doing the same old thing and expecting a different result, just because you want it to be happening that way, and not because you're changing to make it happen. We're rapidly approaching the witching hour of 7 o'clock. I just want to thank everybody very much. I've noticed there's been a tremendous chat conversation going on. As you probably know, Zoom collates all of that. So what I'll do is actually put that in a document and circulate it, because I think there's probably, I haven't been reading the chat because I've been monitoring the conversation, but it'd be great to have access to that. So I'll gather all that together, put it in a doc, and then circulate it to everybody, so you can all catch up on what the conversation was about. I hope it was clean. I'm sure it was very friendly. Listen, thank you all very much indeed for being with us again. I love these sessions. Thank you for being with us. Do come again next week. As you know, there's no 3-line whip. It's come as you are, come when you want to. But it's a delight being with you. And I'll see you all again very, very soon. Cheers for now.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe.
Thanks.